Yes, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Rugby Muscle Podcast. I'm your host, as always, TJ, and today we are returning once again back with guests, and I'm really happy about this because we've got guests coming on the podcast from all different places, fields, and views. Guests that are going to give you not just information, but entertain you and give you a little bit of a unique view and be a little bit different to other strength and conditioning podcasts, other fitness podcasts, and other rugby podcasts that you'll hear. People mostly within my circle that I have seen that have intrigued me and have an interesting story or an interesting view. And I hope that these podcasts, these interviews that will come out every single Wednesday, will really benefit you and give you, some ideas, some entertainment, and some tips that you will be able to use to add to your training, diet, or just inspire you and have a good listen on a Wednesday afternoon. So, without further ado, this first podcast has Guy Thompson, whose career took him from Tier 5 in the English Rugby system all the way to the Premiership, to the Heineken Cup. And I don't want to give too much away because this podcast is awesome. He gives his whole story in this one, and I don't think he's given it anywhere else. So I don't plan on giving long intros for any of these other interviews. In fact, we're just going to get straight into them. But I did think that this one warranted a bit of a preamble because this, you are going to want to give this one a listen, and just to let you know about the interviews that are coming. So if you're new to the Rugby Muscle YouTube channel, subscribe for more. If you're new to the podcast, also subscribe for more. There will be new episodes with interviews every Wednesday, and then it'll also be added to probably going to be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. We'll see how it is going forward. As always, comments, thumbs up, and 5-star reviews are always going to be appreciated. But let's get into this with Guy Thompson. Press record, which I've already done, and say, yes, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another brand new Rugby Muscle podcast. I'm here today with my man Guy Thompson, former London Wasp, Leicester Tiger, Jersey Red, Richmond. Do they have a nickname?
No, I don't think so.
England Sevens, and my former teammate. I'm going to say that early doors so I get a little bit of credibility as a player. Guy Thompson, and current Ealing Trailfinder. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. Really good to catch up with you.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I always have been following your career, and it's not the first question. Actually, yeah, let's get. I'll talk to that in a sec. But before we get into that, how much are you looking forward to this sort of opportunity that you've got with Ealing? Because you've played just the last 2 games in this new cup format. But as far as you're aware, there's still a championship season to be had. So, yeah, give a little comment on if you're looking forward to this season.
Yes, mate. So coming to Ealing, it was something that excited me a little bit. Getting towards I'm 34 now, rugby wise. I'm in probably life. Really good. And when I had the issue, I got excited about. I didn't really know what to expect when I first came down here. I spoke to obviously the coaches, and I spoke to a few players that had been there and moved on, and a few current players. But you never really know what to expect until you actually turn up day in, day out, and you start training and you start understanding what the motivation is behind the club, and about whether they are actually serious about wanting to go up to the Premiership. Because there's been a lot of chat around other clubs in the Championship for the past sort of 5-6 years saying that they want to go up to the Premiership, but they probably couldn't. With Ealing, they are 100% ready to go up to the Premiership. They've got, not only have they got a playing squad which they're invested in heavily, they're also looking at the infrastructure side of things, which was interesting to see when I came down, such as building an academy with Brunel University, building new facilities to make sure that they're in a position that when they do get the opportunity, they can exploit it to the best of their abilities. So I just think that they're ticking a lot of boxes that people probably wouldn't have thought of. And they've done it, but they've done it the right way. It's not a flash in the pan overnight. We've got a load of money, let's go up. They're building infrastructure. They've got facilities. They've been looking at this for the last 5, 6, 7, probably more years. They finished second for the last 4 or 5 years every year in the Championship. So it's done because they do feel that they're ready to step up, and they're making the correct recruitment and the correct choices to back that up at the moment.
And that just excites you. That must be awesome to try and be a part of that, right?
Yeah, it's something that if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, I probably wouldn't have been interested. But when you start looking back at your career and start looking at the things that you've done, to be a part of a club going up to the Premiership and getting them up there against what is going to be a massive battle against Saracens this year.
Yeah.
If we could pull that off, and I think we could do, then it's going to be something that excites everyone and something you can look back on with a huge amount of pride.
That would be like, that'll probably end up like, considering the career that you've had, that would still be like on top of everything else. That would go all the way to the top, right? As far as
it would definitely be up there.
Yeah,
it would definitely be up there. I actually played against Ealing and the current DOR on my way up through the leagues, so it's really interesting that I've actually found myself push of the ladders to get them into the Premiership as well. Yeah,
that would be cool. And talking about your career on the way up, that's I it's by far to me the coolest part of your career, and it's rarely mentioned when like you play and stuff about how you did. Was it level 6? You went? Is it year by year? You went from level 6 all the way to the Premiership. Was it level 5?
It was crazy. It was whatever league Herefordshire were in at the time. I think it was sort of Nash maybe 3 or even Midlands 1 or something like that. But it's a strange old story. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
So obviously, like growing up, rugby was always one of the sports I played. Got to 16, we were going on a multi-sports tour to Australia, and it was my mate's dad at the time was coaching us at school, and he used to play for Northampton as hooker, and he basically turned to me, and we joke about it now, and he said, look, you're not going to make it as a fly half, as you can imagine. He said, I want to try you in the back row. He said, I think you're going to be a really, really good flanker. He said, you'll always be involved in the game and you'll get your head kicked in a little bit. To which it sounds silly, but at the time it really excited me. So that was probably the key moment of someone that had been at a proper Premiership club, someone that had played the sport, looked at my game and said, look, you're not going to be a fly half, you're going to be a forward. So from there, we kind of kicked on a little bit that year. I played the whole year with my school at flanker going into the first 15, and then I got selected for, it was County, North Midlands, and then I was one of the only people from my school that made it through Midlands over all the years. It got through to England trials, and I got through, and I was just this small town boy. And there was boys that I've played with now, like my coach now, Glenn Townsend, was one of the massive second rows from the north, which I just hadn't come across people like that before. Like they were all absolute monsters. But then I played England North that year. Really, really enjoyed it. Sort of found my feet a little bit. It was a hugely proud moment. Just to put a shirt on with the England Rose. It wasn't the full England team, but it was a shirt with a rose on, and that meant everything. I then went on to Bromsgrove School. Managed to get a scholarship there for 2 years to do my college, to do my education. My mum was always very pushed me towards education to make sure that whatever I did in rugby, I was educated with it, which I think I have to thank her for. Mm-hmm. And I ended up playing with Matty Mullen. Through the age group 3 PDG, sort of like the young academy, and developing. I got offered a Premiership contract at 18. Mum stepped in again, told me that there was no way I was going to Pro Rugby unless I got a university degree first. So I went off to, in hindsight, probably the wrong decision. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but It was the wrong decision for me. I don't say university was wrong for everybody at this route, but for me, I've always developed later and I wasn't ready. So I went to university for 3 years at UWIC in Cardiff and loved it. Probably a little bit too much. I came out with a degree. I got a Bachelor of Science in Physical Education, Sport and PE, but I could have done a lot better. I could have studied business. I could have done something different. But I was so mindset on I just wanted to play sport. I just wanted to play rugby. And I had the opportunity to go to an academy and I didn't, so I was going to do it at uni. UWIC was good for me development wise though. I definitely I learned how to harden up. We played in the Welsh leagues, so I played first team in my second and third year there, and we played in what's probably the worst league you could ever imagine. It was like National 1 in Wales, and every week we'd go to these valley sides like Either and Bargoed, Newbridge, and they just called it student bashing time.
Everyone just wants to beat up the university kids.
Exactly that.
Resentful old bastards.
15-man brawls are like going on every single week, and you definitely toughened up a bit as a player. Got to the Brewster final, which we lost to Hartbury in the semi-final one year, and in the final the next. They had an unbelievable team, to be fair. And then off the back of one of those games, actually got scouted for Gloucester, which was quite unheard of at the time. There wasn't really many people going from UWIC to Premiership sides, then we'll go into the teams in Wales, obviously being based in Cardiff. But managed to get a trial at Gloucester off the back of that, signed there for a year with Andres Pretorius, Dan Norton, sort of boys like that, Charlie Sharples, Henry Trinder, the boys that have gone on and had really, really good careers. But at the end of sort of that year, I played England Sevens. Well, I was in the squad for England Sevens that year, which came out of nowhere. Which, again, to go to those training camps, I've never trained so hard in my life. They were brutal. We had to do the RFU fitness test in a closed gym with the heating on to get ready for if you go by. So it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And I kind of pushed my way through that year, and I went on loan to Moseley, but didn't get any game time. So I went on loan to Cinderford, which I loved. Really good club, run correctly. Unbelievable time there. Met some great people that still speak to now. And then kind of at the end of that year, I didn't get offered a contract extension at Gloucester, and I didn't really know what to do. Everything had kind of come quite easy to this point that, I didn't go to Worcester, so I went to university went to Gloucester, what do I do now? I look back on it now and realise I was probably hiding away from fear of failure. I spoke about it a little bit before. It was at this point when, rather than facing up and tackling it on head on, I kind of hid away and I shot across to Ayia Napa for 2 weeks with some friends, and it was easy to stay out there and stay away from rugby and not face the questions of why didn't you make it. I just stayed out there for the whole summer and did a summer abroad. Interesting. I don't recommend it to any budding rugby professionals, but what I do recommend is getting out of your comfort zone and working abroad. I went over there with about 200 quid in my pocket, and I got a job obviously, and I lasted 8 months. And it was I learned a huge amount about myself out there. But
do you think you got away from being like, that was like your first time? Sounds like it was the first time you getting away from being like Guy Thompson, the rugby player.
Yeah, 100%. I've got some really, really good friends at home. Hereford's a small town, but if you're playing rugby and you're doing well, that's the first thing people ask you about straight away.
Yeah.
But yeah, no one knew me over there. No one had a clue who I was. It was unbelievable. I could just be me, and that was good and bad in a way.
Yeah.
But I was working behind a bar topless every night.
That sounds like you, mate.
Yeah. And then I met a few boys out there, Liam Chennels, and he's the one that first phoned me when he went back. He was like, we're going to go to Dubai with a team called Templars, which was Sevens, obviously, and that was it. I kind of went, right, yeah, let's go to Dubai. So I shot back, did some training, shot off to Dubai with Rob Kane, Liam and that, and kind of just played rugby out there and really, really enjoyed it again. I saw that rugby didn't have to be a job. It was something that all these people were out there, and it had every level in Dubai. You know what it's like. It's got all the international tournaments, all the men and women, the top of their game. And then as you come down, it's got all the different social teams, and people just go out there, play and enjoy it, and we definitely enjoyed it. And then I came back and I thought, I was back to Hereford, I'd travelled, I'd been to Dubai, and I was like, what am I going to do now? I didn't have any idea. And it was actually the coach that moved me positions all those years ago when I was 15, that said to me, like, come down to Hereford, sort of, we can give you £50 a game. It was in I think Midlands 1 or National 3 or something like that. And I was really, really nervous about going, because it was full of the boys that were 2, 3, 4 years above me at school. And I'd kind of never played club rugby, so I didn't know how they were going to take me. I turned up to Hereford, and it was probably the best decision. Like, unbelievable men down there. Like, all the people I went to school with that were a couple of years above welcomed me in. Gave me a hard time, but in a fun way. Like, just pulled my leg, said, "Oh, you haven't made it. You're back down here with us." And do you know what? That
not like a cynical way. Just yeah.
No. That's the beauty about rugby is you've got to have a thick skin, but it all comes from a place of love, and no one would have held it against you for going and giving it a go and then coming back. They actually, I think, respected me more for coming back and playing at Hereford again than they would have done if I just went off and stayed away. So I played sort of the season there when they were facing relegation, played for Hereford. ended up doing a few sevens tournaments with yourself throughout the summer. And we played Templars, and we went to Solstice, and we did all sorts, loads of different sevens tournaments. Was really enjoying rugby, and it was from there I met a friend called John. He offered me a job in London and just literally said to me, look, come work for me. I'm a recruitment manager in London. So I kind of went, yeah, well, I'm not doing anything else. I'm sat at home. So I shot across to London, went down to play there, and it was TJ and Laura, two of the girls that played for the Pink Barbars, like two of my best friends to this day still. They basically said to me, they gave me a place to stay for free for a month. They looked after me to get me in London, but they said, if you stay here, you have to play for Richmond. So they told me I had to continue playing rugby because TJ was an England international, Laura loved rugby, and they didn't want to see me waste what they said was a talent. So rather than just working in London, I actually used rugby as sort of a cathartic release then as well. So when the stress of working in an office as a recruitment manager or anything like that would get too much, I'd always have the escape of Tuesday, Thursday rugby and play on a Saturday.
Definitely.
Loved my time at Richmond, played with Ross Broadfoot, James Brooks, some boys that had played Premiership. And they really, not inspired me, but really showed me a different way of playing. Again, they were both fly halves. I loved playing as a wide flanker. I like to think that I was ahead of my time by not being in the forwards 24/7 getting beaten up, that I'd actually try and link the 7 with the backs and go stand in 13 channel and try and be in that area, and I guess that's from 7, so it kind of moulded the way I played. Had a great year at Richmond. Then I had the decision to make because we played against Jersey, who were unbeaten at the time, trying to get through the leagues.
I'm still here, mate. Are you gone?
Are you still there?
I am.
Are you back?
Yeah, I'm here, mate. Did I go for a sec? You should be able to hear me.
Hang on, lovely.
All right, good.
Yeah, I got you now.
Good.
So, I really enjoyed it going through the league with Richmond, and then Jersey were unbeaten. We played against them at Richmond and we beat them. In a game I scored 2 tries in, and Kern Yates, who played a very high standard, was with the Jersey coach, and he said to Ben Harvey, like, if I was you, I'd sign that number 7. Like, if you're looking at climbing the leagues, he could be a player that you get hold of. And then they found out my dad was from Jersey, and I've got a lot of family out there. They offered me a contract, so I had the decision to make at the end. Did I want to give rugby a go? And they were going up, so Richmond were National 2 South, Jersey were in that one going International 1 if they won the league. I signed then for Jersey thinking, right, do I want to give professional rugby another go, even though it's 3 leagues below the Premiership, or do I want to focus on a career and just stay playing with the boys at Richmond, and probably not go much further? Obviously that they're in the Championship now, but at the time they didn't really have aspirations of going all the way. So it was tough, but it was one of those where my manager at work said to me, he said, you can come back to this job anytime you want, like, go for it. So I shot across Jersey, played in some really good boys. There was Di Bishop, Nicky Griffiths came across it, played a higher standard. There was Sean O'Brien's brother Stevie was there, who was playing flanker in my position. And Stevie was very hard bloke, Irish man, like very high up with his finance work in Jersey, but was a really outstanding player. Again, he taught me a huge amount in the breakdown area. He taught me a huge amount of how to cheating, because when I played against him, he kept standing on my foot, kept like pulling me out the way. You know what? I learned a huge amount playing against him, even more from him being my teammate. But anyway, like National 1, we lost the first 6 games, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, maybe it's not going to be such an easy promotion this year. But then we went on, I think Ealing were in the league and they were top, and we went on a 20-game unbeaten run. And we blew teams away. I think Cinderford were there, Ealing were there, Barking were there. There was all these different teams that I'd heard of, and suddenly I was playing against them for Jersey, and we put together this run that just took us from almost bottom towards the top. And then at the end of that year, I ended up finishing with, I think, Players Player and Player of the Year and top try scorer. So I had like a really good first year with them. And then we went up into the Championship, and now this was going to be the issue for me, or the real challenge I looked at. I've done National 3, I've done National 2, I've done National 1. How high did I believe I could go and make this different. So we went into the Championship, and it was the year Doncaster were in there as well. Yorkshire were in there. Yorkshire was our first game away on a Friday night. I always remember that game. I made a couple of line breaks in that with Ross Broadfoot, scored a couple, and I started believing that, one, not only could I play this level, but I could have a direct influence on it. And for Jersey, it was just purely the plan of action was stay in the league. We always knew the first year would be the hardest to stay in, because you don't have the recruiting power of pulling people in, and Jersey weren't going to throw out a huge amount of money for the sake of it. What they wanted to do was build a team, so it was imperative that we just stayed up. So we had a decent year. We got a couple of wins. I think Plymouth at home was our first win in a big game. Doncaster were having a bit of a nightmare, and it came down to a relegation battle at Jersey. And we played them towards the end of the season. They built it up. The loser of this was pretty much going to get relegated. And I scored 2 in that game and got a turnover in the last play of the game, which won us a penalty. And we stayed up. And I always remember we celebrated that game. We celebrated that game like we'd won the league, because for us that was something that we'd been working towards. That even now people won't believe it. That was still one of probably my favourite seasons. Yeah. Or one of the seasons I'm most proud of in my career, because we didn't have a star-studded team. We had some good players, people like Ben Evans and Di Bishop, Nicky Griff, but we didn't have a team that everyone looked at and went, oh my God, they've got Premiership guys, or this, that and the other. It was a team purely built on what we believed we could achieve. And Ben Harvey was a magnificent coach. We got Steve Bowden across and Ben Evans, the forwards coach, so we had a lot of experience, but it was just a bunch of lads that lived on an island together that had a really, really close-knit group, and that's why I think we stayed up. But I actually signed a new contract with Jersey. Not many people know this. At the end of that second year in the champ, I got nominated for Championship Player of the Year, which there was 3 of us. There was Tim Strether, Stevie McCall and myself. Both Tim was at Nottingham, Stevie was at Leeds, and I was at Jersey, bottom of the table, like second from bottom. So for me to get nominated for that by all the other coaches in the team, again, was something that I didn't think would ever happen. And I remember getting the phone call to say I was nominated for that, and I hung up the phone, and 2 minutes later I had a phone call from an old agent of mine that wasn't working for me or anything like that at the time. He just said, just so you know, Wasps are going to phone you up with an offer. And I was like, oh great. What I didn't tell him is 2 days previously I'd signed a new contract with Jersey, because I won't lie, and I'll be quite open about this. I put together video clips when I was at Jersey, because when I was having a good year in the Championship, I know that I wanted to play Premiership. So I put together video clips and I sent them to every single DOR in the Premiership. I sent them to every single coach in the Premiership, and I sent them through with emails saying, this is my game. Do you think I'm good enough for not good? Do you think I'm good enough? Would you be interested? Here's my detail. I sent them video clips, because why not? Yeah, I don't see why. People have agents all the time, and agents go out and do stuff. But if you want something, you've got to be proactive, and you've got to take it. You've got to make it happen. So,
and if you've got the clips, right? If you're good enough.
To be fair though, clips they only show half a game. For sure. I know that any single coach that sees clips will go and look at the full game.
Yeah.
So it just for me made the clips.
But you've got some good enough clips, that someone would then want to watch the whole game and be like, yeah, well, that was the plan, good, right?
that was the plan, and it wasn't that good. But the plan was, and I remember Matt Banahan as well, but obviously a Jersey lad, spoke to Mike Ford about me. He was at Bath at the time, so I spoke to Mike. Unfortunately, there wasn't room in the budget, but Mike said keep in touch. So I've always kept in touch with Mike. I spoke to a London Irish coach at the time and a few others, and I was getting the same messages that people were interested, but not yet. I'd only done 1 year in the champ, and I actually think it was Barry Davis, who was our fullback at the time at Jersey, who was really good friends with Stephen Jones, the Welsh fly half, who was obviously Wasps' attack coach. I think, and he's never told me to this day, I think he phoned up Stephen and put a word in for me, because Wasps didn't tell me anything. They just gave me an offer and said, we want you to come. So I then had to have a conversation with Ben Harvey about previously signing a contract with Jersey and how do we go about going to Wasps, because I want to go. Like, there was no two ways about it. And to be fair, Ben was outstanding. I don't know the details. I know there was a buyout clause, and I know I offered to pay it myself. out of the salary, because for me it was never about money or anything. It was about, I'd come through these leagues, I'd proven myself in every single league coming up. Now I wanted to prove myself in the Premiership, or just have an opportunity. So for me, it was a really easy decision. Ben Harvey was amazing. He let me go. They sorted out all the issues with contracts and stuff, and literally that was in May. And yeah, that was towards the end of May, because I did the I never forgive Matt Banahan for this. I did the commentary for the Siam Cup, and it was all really, really quiet. And Banners phoned up and asked a question on commentating and went, "So, Guy, is there a real buzz about this game?" Straight away, you and the boys knew, and I was just like, "Oh, Matt, come on, mate." But yeah, and I was literally at Wasps the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks later. I packed my car up the next day and I drove away from Jersey, and that was it. I was off to Wasps. Had an unbelievable 5 years at Wasps. Like, for me, Wasps I'll always be indebted for giving me the opportunity. I was there for about 3 months. I was impressed. Right, we signed a 2-year contract straight away. I was learning with the likes straight away of James Haskell, Nathan Hughes. There was a massive influx of boys this year because they just finished second from bottom. They just survived relegation. So there was a massive influx of players and they were rebuilding. So from second from bottom in the league with Jersey, I went to a club that was second from bottom in the league in the Premiership. And then the end of the first year, we finished 7th, which we had a playoff game with Stade Francais away, which I got man of the match in. And we beat them in that. And we ended up getting in the Heineken Cup for the second year. And then in my 3rd or 4th year, we made semi-finals for I think 3 or 4 years on a row. And in my 3rd or 4th year, we made the Premiership final. And we made European semi-finals as well. So you literally couldn't write it. No. And I'd like to think that I had some sort of impact in some of the games. But to have the opportunity to learn my trade, and I was old at this time. I was I didn't play Premierships. I was mid-20s. So when I say learn my trade, I really do think I learnt my trade from people like James Haskell, Sam Jones, and George Smith. Like who else could you learn from? Like, no one better than George Smith. Like, he's unbelievable. Like, he put so much time into helping myself, Thomas Young, in and around the breakdown area, that I felt like I owe him a huge amount. And then I managed to get to my 100th at Wasps, which again I never thought possible. The day I signed at Wasps, I would have been happy with one appearance just to prove that I'd played Premiership, and I've made it. I ended up making 100 appearances for Wasps. I got presented with the Ivor Montlake Trophy, which is outstanding service to Wasps, and I was on stage with Danny Sipp. Yeah, with Danny Sips and James Haskell, and we shared the award together, and I was stood in the middle of these two Wasps legends, and there was me. I felt so out of place. But at the same time, I was so emotional and proud. I almost cried. And then I went to Leicester, obviously, for 2 years. I'd always loved Welford Road. I'd always wanted to call Welford Road not home, but I always wanted to know what it was like to play as a home player there, because I loved Welford Road in the way play. I loved the hostility. I loved the fact it was an old school rugby club, and then I had the option to sign there for 2 years, and took it. Really, really enjoyed my time there. Again, met some meeting people that are involved with Leicester. You really get a sense of what passion is for a club. You have Delalio at Wasps, like that club means everything to him. And then you go to Leicester, and then you meet people like Lewis Deacon, or Brett Deacon, and then you meet people that are like Tom Youngs, Ben Youngs, Dan Cole, that are still playing, that have been there for years, and you really understand what that club means to those people. To have the opportunity to wear a shirt alongside those players was something that I was really grateful for and really proud of as well. Did 2 years there, and then had the opportunity at Ealing. So I want to get Ealing to the Premiership now. Like, I won't be happy if we can't get Ealing to the Premiership while I'm there wearing the Ealing shirt, because I do think that they could be a sleeping giant of something that could kick on in the Premiership.
Well, if the rest of your career is anything to go by, that's exactly what's going to happen, right? That's the one thing that's sort of missing, is the promotion from the Championship to the Premiership. You promoted yourself up every league, but not with the team.
I should take a team with me, shouldn't I, one time?
Yeah, and I guess that leads me to one of the questions I was always going to ask, is like the differences between the leagues. Like, as someone that's played at a sort of a lower level, and as I've gone up with clubs and stuff, sometimes it's really hard to grasp how much better a team is or how much better a league is when you're playing against them, but you're playing with different teammates each time and it keeps evolving. But, like, do you think that there's is it because what you've seemed to do in every league has just kept on going and kept on going? Is there any league where you thought, Jesus, this is a lot different this year than it was last year?
Every single one of them. Single one of them felt a step up every time. When you're lower down the leagues, sometimes that can be really tough because you have to play higher, but you're only as good as, and that sounds really corny or a bit of a cliche, but it's 100% true. You can't do your job, especially as a flanker, unless other people, are doing theirs. I've been lucky. I've been around very, very good players. The big difference for me, National 1 to Championship was absolutely massive, because you go from playing part-time semi-professionals that have a job every day and that they only play rugby for fun, to going into a league where everybody is professional. So suddenly there's a massive step up, and it took us a while to gauge that with Jersey, but when we started really understanding how teams played and the analysis and the stuff that goes into it, that was good. The Championship is one of the most physical physical leagues. Yes, it might not be the most skillful, but it's got some massive lumps in there that know how to hit hard. I saw that last weekend against Doncaster. There were some massive hits. But for me, when you go up to that Premiership, it's not easier because the fitness is harder and everybody's in shape, but people do their jobs in your team.
Right.
So
you can just focus on your job.
Exactly that. You don't need to be an absolute superhero in every single game.
Yeah.
Of every single minute. And when you're lower down the leagues, people look at you to do that a little bit. But when you're in the Premiership, your job for your team is do your job, do your role. If you're not in a position of defensive line that you're supposed to be, it doesn't matter how good your teammates are, you've let them down and a team score. If you're not in the right place to run a dummy line or a blocking line or to give a pass, it's your fault and you've let your team down, because they expect you to be there, because they expect you to know your roles. And then the next step up from that, European rugby. Obviously, never played international, but European rugby for me in the Champions Cup, the old Heineken Cup. Wow, that's different level, because you are literally. It's fast, it's physical. I can imagine that's as close to international rugby without being it as you can get.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Championship level rugby there, sort of like a Heineken Cup is. Do you know what a buzz though? Because you stand next to each team and they play the music as you walk out. I can imagine it's what Champions League football's like for the footballers, but you hear the music as you walk out onto the pitch and the crowd goes berserk. Leinster away was one where I got hit with a wall of noise. It was at the RDS, nice. Which is their smaller stadium, and I was stood, and I always remember it. I think it was my first Champions Cup game. And you all stand next to each other, so I'm a little bit nervous, and I'm not the biggest of back rowers anyway, so I'm stood there ready to go out. Can you guess who was stood next to me on their team?
Oh,
Picture the tallest.
Devon Toner.
Yes, Devon Toner was stood next to me. I literally stood there
huge.
and just looked up and was like, "What the hell have I got myself into?"
Just another step up.
Another step up, and you got hit as you walked out. A wall of noise hit you, and you just could feel it, and then it was electric. Then I couldn't tell you what happened in the rest of the game.
One game I remember you playing was Toulon, when didn't you get man of the match that game? That was like one where I was like, I want to see how guys getting on, and then you smoked it. I was like, yeah.
That for me is probably, that to me still feels like a bit of a dream. It sounds silly, but
yeah,
Toulon away. I remember because I played there the year before, and it was weird because I wasn't due to start the year before and end up starting. And it's the first time I saw the Piri Piri chant, the Pili Pili, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at this man with a tattoo on his face, screaming, and the crowd was going mad. And I was like, "Oh my god, this is mental!" And the first kick-off, I was stood at number 8. We kicked off, I hung back, they kicked it, I knocked it on, scrum. And I just thought, oh my god. And all my teammates were great. Shook my head, next job. Ended up doing okay. I played 55 minutes, got brought off. I remember Ali Williams, the Kiwi second row, came up to me at the end of the game and said, "Oh, you're going to have a good career, mate. Good luck." I don't think he realised I was about 28 at the time. But I just took it and was like, oh, thank you very much. Like, really, like. And then the following year, again, I wasn't supposed to be starting, but Nathan got injured. So I ended up playing number 8, and I think it was, I'm pretty sure, George Smith was 7, I was 8, and I don't know if it was Hask. I think it was Hask or Ash Johnson at 6. So again, like a really good back row around me. But it was just one of those games, and we've all had that one game in our career where things just went right. I managed to get a couple turnovers. Our scrum wasn't going the best, but I managed to control the ball at the back and just pick it. And it was just pure instinct. It wasn't anything that we tried. It was just a case of get the ball and run away from people. I remember there was Mar Nonu against me, and Juan Smith, and there was Habana, Drew Mitchell, Steph Armitage, Dwayne Vermeulen at 8. This team this team was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So what did I have to lose? No one expected me to do any good. So I actually went down injured just before the scrum in the 72nd minute, and I'd snapped a ligament in my toe. I didn't know how bad at the time, but I'd said to my physio, I was like, mate, I can't put my foot down. He's like, we're gonna have to take you off. I said, no, because I knew we were running this set play off the scrum where we'd hit up wide. If we didn't make the 15, we'd go round the corner, but if we made the 15, then we'd come back on a hard line off 10, and I always fancied that line off 10, thinking I could get in behind them. Well, we didn't make the. Elliot Daly made an unbelievable break, and he got us on the front foot, so they were scrambling. But it was about on just this side of the 15, so only about a metre. So half the team were thinking we're going to stay this way, and I thought, no, I'm going around the corner. So I went around the corner. Jimmy, I think it was Jimmy, fired the pass out, and it was supposed to go to Lossie on the wing, but I nicked it off the air, and then I remember just running. And I managed to hand off Juan Smith and Vermeulen, and went through both of those and scored in the corner with Habana and Drew Mitchell on my back. And I went mental, and I couldn't feel my toe. Like, even now I get goosebumps from it now, because that's the one thing I was like, oh my God, like, they're unbeaten in so many years, and this try put us up. I booted the ball in the crowd, and I went to walk back, and then my toe had just gone. And so I didn't feel it for about 30 seconds, and all of a sudden I couldn't walk. And there's a video of me coming off the pitch. It looks like my ankle's dislocated or broken, but I couldn't walk. I came off the pitch, and then they scored. They knocked it on in a ruck, which to this day still haunts me, and they scored last play of the game. But it was too late. They'd already awarded man of the match. So I got told by the lady that interviewed me, I was the first ever English person to get man of the match in a losing team in France in the Champions Cup. And I've still got the vase here today. Like, it's in my flat here.
Class.
It's probably my proudest moment ever, simply because of who was on the pitch and who I played against. And we lost, but for me that was just the feeling that I got from that game. One of my best friends, Adam, had flown over with his dad for his birthday present, for his Christmas present. So I had one of my best mates in the stadium there as well.
Nice.
And when we scored in the corner, the whole place went silent. They went silent, like it was definitely quiet. And do you know what? To silence a French crowd the way that we did with that team was something that I'll never forget.
Yeah, from as loud as it was at the beginning as well, right? That must be bloody awesome.
Sure. Even now, I can't stop smiling when I talk about that game. Like,
yeah.
It's that for me, one of my career highlights, and no one can take that away from me now. Like, from the lower leagues to that, Toulon away, who were reigning champions at the time, I'll always just be. Yeah, that I'm just happy.
That's like what a way to come like full circle as well, from like you say, the lower leagues, just playing with some mates that are giving you shit about failing your rugby career, to brushing off the best players in the world to score in the corner. Like, do you think that like taking that drop down shaped the way that your career was? Like you said earlier that you regretted going to uni. So if you could do it again, would you actually do it differently?
Really good question. I've been asked this something similar before, and every time I think of it, I think of a different answer. I want to say no, because I never want to trade in those memories and experiences of the lower league, of the grassroots level, of what and understanding what rugby means to people outside of the professional game. The lessons I learned have developed me as a person, and I always say everything happens for a reason, and I think I could easily have gone into the Premiership at a young age and fallen away and had a useless career and not enjoyed it and not made it if I'd have gone there. But what I am so thankful for is the lessons rugby has taught me along the way. The lessons that you don't need to develop at a young age. You can take your time. One of the points I said earlier about going to university, I wasn't ready for university. This was just me. I got my degree, but I didn't do as well as I could do. But now I'm 33, 34. I'm doing a master's degree in business at the Montfort University. So if you'd have told me that all those years ago, I'd said, no chance, I've done uni, I'm not doing that again. Everyone develops in their own time. So I don't think I would change it because it's helped me be me. It's helped me develop in my own time. And the lessons I learned and the people I met, I wouldn't trade for anything. And I tell you what, that my debut at Wasps, I'll always remember when I was walking out at Twickenham, the London doubleheader, 60,000 people, and I knew how much that meant to me because I'd come through every single league and I'd proved everybody wrong, told me I couldn't make it, that I was now there making it, and that took all the pressure off me, and I just enjoyed it.
I think taking the pressure off is probably what I was going to go on to next. That's the sort of thing that I thought about it. It was like you said at the beginning when you were in the Gloucester team and when you were being loaned out to other areas, like you sort of just did your job. But at that age, when you're 20, 21, you're happy just to play for a living, which is a very you're not getting much money. But there are so many back rows that are that age that are all just as hungry as you. It seems like you sort of got lost in the shuffle, and because you were scared to stand out, and then going to Richmond, or even the lower level of Hereford, like that allowed you to sort of play the game that you play differently and be more and just enjoy it. And then that's what actually carried it forward to like how you played against the Toulon and full circle. And I think it's something that I find when I look back on how I played rugby, like there was so much fear when I was a younger player, and it took me dropping down to a lower level for a year or so, or playing a few lower level games and stuff to make me realise like, oh no, this is just fun. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah, you know? Like I think people forget why do you play rugby when you're younger?
Yeah,
because you enjoy it.
Fun, yeah.
You there's no way, and I don't care what people say, there is no way you put your body on the line in rugby if you don't enjoy it, because it's brutal. There is injuries, there is risks, there is concussions, there is impacts. It is a terrible sport on paper, but what it gives you back is so much. I would not be where I am today without rugby. No two ways about it. Not as a person, not as a player, just in general. Rugby gave me so much that why wouldn't you enjoy it? Because all those, when I felt more pressure when I was on loan at clubs, because you went on loan from Gloucester and you were not looked at odd, but there was an expectation that you were going to be a good player because you were on loan from an academy. Mm-hmm. Whether that's at Moseley or Cinderford, or whenever you go elsewhere, then there's that expectation. Excuse me, old guys dropped down the leagues at Hereford when we played Luctonians, who were better than Hereford at the time. We actually beat them in one of the games, but it was like, oh God, let's see what he's got then. That was pressure. Mm-hmm. When you started getting through the leagues and just being with your teammates, just enjoy, just play because you loved it again. Like, and I found that love for it again. It just went, and then it never went away. And now, like, people said to me, like, why are you going to Ealing? Like, you won't enjoy this. I will enjoy it because I'm playing. It's a game at the end of the day. Like, throughout this pandemic that we're seeing at the moment, I have been so fortunate that I've been able, apart from the first lockdown, this lockdown now, we're classed as elite sports, so we're able to go training every day. We're able to play, we get tested, and we are able to play games and train and be with our team. I will always be thankful for that, because there is so many people struggling at the moment that rugby's just helping us give something back to these people that are struggling by giving them something to watch or something to be a part of.
Yeah, when the lockdown first happened, it's funny that people were saying, oh, we don't need sport, there are more important things than sport, but you soon realise, like, no, like, play in front of no crowds, do whatever you can, but people need something, and the sport is easily one of the things that, like, at least get some sort of semblance of normalcy. And I remember when Super Rugby at Aotearoa started happening, I was like waking up at like 1 a.m. I'm like, fucking finally, like live sport. What's going on? Like,
get it on.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
I remember that, mate. Like, literally, we've not seen any live sport on the telly, and then Super Rugby was on, and all this, the NRL and stuff. And the NRL was awesome, wasn't it? And I was getting up and watching it, as you were, because it was on, and it was it was amazing to watch. I know people that have never watched rugby league before, started watching the NRL, and now support teams. They now watch the NRL, and they now love the NRL because that was the only thing that was on, and people. It just showed that it gave people something to watch. Football's been unbelievable for the country because people love football. People love tuning in and watching football on telly or watching rugby on telly and just going, yes, we can interact with something. We can talk to our mates on the phone about something that we're all watching and enjoying.
And
without going down the pub.
Remember that you can eventually get back to playing as well, I think.
Yeah. We will get back there one day.
Yeah. We just didn't realise how long, everyone was thinking weeks or months, and now it's like, how many years until it's like normal.
Yeah.
But, oh well. I don't want to talk too much about training because I think this story in itself is like made for like a really good podcast. I'm really happy with it. But I do want to talk about you as a player in terms of like how you were a number 8 that you said, you sort of said that you're a back row a bit ahead of your time. Like, you were never the biggest. I mean, you were never the biggest back row, let alone to then play number 8. And do you think that that's like played a factor in more of your success than it has a detriment? Because I deal with like a lot of younger players now that are like, they're 85 kgs or something like that, and they're young, and they're like, I need to be 100 because that's what I need to be. Like,
you know what? This is the thing that winds me up the most about younger players. Why are people obsessed with being the biggest to play? I understand that teams want bigger players. I understand this. But what is it going to prove if you're big but can't catch a ball? What is the point of being 105 kilos if you don't know how to tackle? Like, for me, the development of children or the development of under 18s, they should be body weights, so they know core strength, joint strength, mobility, neck, core, things like that will give them a platform when they get on, and develop your skills. Learn to tackle correctly, learn to carry correctly, learn to break down correctly, to jackal, learn to pass, learn how to run dummies or hard lines or mismatches, learn to do 2-on-2s, 3-on-1s. This is where you're going to develop. I didn't hit 100 kilos until towards the end of my year at Gloucester. So I'd gone all through university. I was 22 until I made 100 kilos. Till that age, till then, I was always 90, 91, 92, 95 at a push. Now I've got older and my body's developed naturally and developed the way it was supposed to develop. I topped out at 112, 113 kilos at Leicester when they wanted me heavy, which was too heavy, by the way.
Yeah.
But now I play comfortably between probably 103 and 106. Like that's my weight, my natural body weight. If I wasn't to do loads of weights, I'd probably drop down a little bit, but I wouldn't drop down huge because my body's grown as it's supposed to grow. Yes, I've done weights. Yes, I've trained my arse off and put a huge amount of effort in, but it's been nothing that's made me. I've never swelled up 10 kilos in 6 months.
Yeah.
It's all been gradual. It's all been the right development, and I thank all the S&Cs and the trainers that I've been involved with because that's the way it's done. What wrecks me is when you see people obsessed with stats. Well, we had that chat the other day, didn't we, a little bit online about the 1 rep maxes. That what do they actually solve? Yep. I said to you about maybe it might just let you know what working weight you need.
Yeah.
And you said, well, you can work that out anywhere. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Why do people need to put their body through absolute duress to be a rugby player? The game is hard enough without having to load your back with a 250 kilo back squat.
That no one cares
I haven't
about.
Squatted. No, I've not squatted for 8 years until I joined Ealing. So I wanted to squat again, and I've started really low, and I only go to 90 to a bench now because I don't need to go all the way to the floor. Because what's that going to prove? I can put weight to the floor and put stress on my knees. No, I can go to 90 and I can get strength in my legs, and we do a lot of single-legged stuff. Like single-legged RDLs, or we do skater squats or stuff like that, because that develops you more to be functional on the pitch than it does to put your body under duress or unnecessary like inflammation and stuff that you just don't need when you're getting battered 4 times a week. no, I
couldn't agree more. And the first thing that you said was like the best as well. I really enjoyed that way. It's like, because I say this to people all the time, they're like, what's the best weight exercise I can do to be a better tackler. I'm like, well, why don't you go inside and just practice tackling? Like no one ever does it.
And don't get me wrong, I understand that, and I'll tell you what I'm going to be doing in a minute. But I understand that there are certain exercises that will make you more powerful in certain positions. Mm-hmm. But if you don't get your shoulder or your head in the right place, it's pointless.
Yeah,
these exercises, or someone just steps you. Someone like one of the Fijian Sevens boys, Charles Piatal, for example. Charles will absolutely make silly and get your feet in right. Like he did it to me numerous times. Or Wadey in training. Wadey would make me look silly in a 5 metre channel. But that helped me because then I learned how to control my feet more. The weight in the gym's not going to help me there. Being on the pitch with somebody stepping me helped me because I learned what triggers to read. But this is one of the reasons why I haven't actually told anyone yet, but I'm just doing my level 2 and 3 personal training stuff now.
Oh, yeah.
But I've just started. I literally got a course. I'm about to open it up and look at it tonight for the first time because I figured with the amount of stuff that I've done in and around, I want to try helping people now, similar to what you do.
Nice.
In the fact that there's all these young people that are around within the sports industry and within this rugby industry that don't need to worry about being the biggest or the strongest or lifting the most. What they need to do is learn what can help them in the gym, technically wise, when they play. And you're amazing for it. Like I look at all your stuff and I look at the work you're doing is incredible. Like it really is, because what you're teaching these kids isn't to screw your back in the gym. Because I'm not being funny, when you get on a rugby pitch, who says to you, "Oh, what do you deadlift, mate? How much do you squat?" But I tell you what, they don't ask that question if someone just ran over the top of someone and he scored 2 tries.
Yeah.
Or if someone's gone around the outside of someone and gassed him and scored in the corner. I'm pretty sure it's irrelevant how much he lifts on his bicep or his chest then when he's just stepped someone and scored.
Yeah. Completely irrelevant. Yeah. It's and same for his body weight as well. No one cares.
No, like I think it was the All Blacks a couple of years ago actually went away from size. They're pioneers in the sport. We know that they're the best there is. They're the best there was. The best there will be for the foreseeable future. Mm-hmm. They are freaks of the game, and they are not the biggest. Yeah, they're strong, but they're not the strongest. Yeah, they're big, but they're not the biggest. But my God, they can play because they can play rugby. It's their national sport, and they play it from when they're born, and they understand the game better than anybody else, and that's why they're the best. The weights, the speed, they're just accessories to being a skillful rugby player and understanding the sport. Yeah,
couldn't agree with you more, mate. Preaching the same things that I preach, and it's always good to hear to give myself a little bit of confirmation bias from some of the best
100%.
players. Cool.
100%.
I don't want to get too much into more training talk because I think
Yep.
You want to open up that personal trainer course, and we'll have another chat in a few weeks' time. And
yeah, definitely, we'll do that.
I think that'd be cool. So I've got two little questions to finish off with.
Yep.
Firstly, it's an interesting question I've started to throw at my guests, and I think it's quite a cool one. So, what do you think rugby looks like in 20 years' time?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I hope still around.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm.
The way, do you know what? Really tough question because it's changed so much. I said this the other day to somebody. It changed so much from when I've played Premiership to now, and that's just sort of 8 years. Mm-hmm. The game is totally different. I think the way the game goes, I think size starts becoming a little bit less relevant. And I think it turns into a really fast, mobile game. Almost sevens, but more contact.
Oh, yeah.
I think it will get to the point, and it's getting there now, with a lot of the stats teams use now is speed of ball, like how quick you get out the ruck, exactly like seven, get the defence unset. But with 15s, there's still going to be room for the big line-out boys or the big forwards, because when you get some of those boys trundling, it is tough. I hope the league takes off in America. I hope that it gets this global brand. I really hope that rugby continues to grow and develop the way it does, and I hope it starts to get governed by the next generation of people that want to see it grow.
Yeah. All right. I won't pry any further with that, but that's good points. And then I guess how can listeners get in touch and follow your journey, hopefully back up to the Premiership, and find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I always try and interact as much as I can. So if anyone does on the back of this have any questions, it's Guy Thompson 87 on both. If anyone does have any questions about this or anything about rugby, any of the younger sort of children or adults or anything that want to play or asking questions, just fire me across a DM or a message request, and I'll try and get back to them as much as I can.
Awesome, mate. When's your next game?
We've got Sarries this weekend in the. So our owner was really good. He was sick of not having competitive, so he put up a trophy for us, Doncaster and Sarries, a little Tri-Nations tournament. So we beat Sarries at home by a point the first week. We beat Donny away with 5 points. Sarries and Donny got called off, so Donny got given the win because of COVID. And then we got Sarries this weekend. So if we win this weekend with 5 points or 4 points, I think that might guarantee us the trophy before the last game. But we'll see. I think the most important thing for us to focus on is just where are we as a squad. We beat Sarries at home. How good are we away? Let's see where we are and see if we can back it up, because that will send a few messages out. Yeah,
that will poke the bear, I think, a little bit.
Ideally for me, I know that it's probably not the right. Yeah, it's probably the right time. I think that they should ring fence a Premiership. As you said, 20 years. I don't know what they'll do in 20 years, but in a couple of years, the Premiership needs to go to 14. They need to get rid of the Prem Cup because it doesn't bring anything to the game. I understand why it's there at the moment, but what would be more beneficial would be making a 14-team Premiership. It would help with this. I think it would help with the salary cap. It would help spread players over 14 teams rather than 12. It would give more opportunities to academy players and youngsters coming through, and it will grow the game. And I also don't think you have to ring fence it straight away. You don't have to relegate straight away. What you could realistically do is put Ealing and Sarries up at the end of this year. You could then ring fence it for 2 or 3 years, give the Championship time to adjust, invest, get more players, give more academies time to invest in players, take away the threat. Then you could open it back up and do a 1 up, 1 down again, and you could look to strengthen rugby as a whole. You don't just have to focus on the 12 there is now. There's room now. There's enough people playing that 14 teams in a Premiership could be really beneficial to rugby in England.
And if not, then it'll be a 13 team even without Saracens, is what you're hoping.
Yeah, 13 for me. That there's an argument saying put Sarries, like they're saying no relegation this year because the unfair COVID games of 4 points. Totally agree with that. It's probably unfair to relegate someone, but you can't promote one team and not relegate because it would make the league unfair. You can't have a bye week at the start. Say one team gets a bye week the first game of the year, but then one team gets a bye week 8 games in. I know which one I'd prefer. I'd prefer a bye week after 8 games because you can reassess and go again. So for me, you have to have an even number of teams, and if that's the case, realistically at the moment, Ealing are the only team that could go up comfortably and really compete. Put Ealing and Sarries up if the league goes well and if the league championship goes ahead, if we're proven. And then once we've gone up in that position, then you can reassess it and develop rugby in England as a whole, rather than just being probably elitist as it is at the moment.
I like it, mate. Well, I wish you all the best with that, and this weekend and in the championship going forward, and more importantly with your personal training certification.
Mate, thank you very much. Great to talk, brother.
Yeah, it's been awesome to have you on.